Section 3 of The Moonmaster by Charles Diffin. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Part 3. The first rays that crept into vision were silvery fingers of light. They reflected up to the heights in glittering brilliance. They gathered and merged as the ship drove on toward the sunrise, and they showed to the watching eye a wondrous, a marvelous world. A world that was snowbound, weighted and blanketed with a mantle of white. To Jerry, the truth came as a crushing, horrible blow. He turned slowly to look at his companion, to look and be startled anew by the happiness depicted on the lean face. "I knew it," the pilot was saying. "I always knew it. But now. He was speechless with joy. "It's terrible," said Foster. He almost resented the other's elation. "It's a hell, just a frozen hell of desolation." Man, was the response. "Can't you see? Look. The whiteness we see is snow, a snow of carbon dioxide. The cold is beyond guessing. But the clear places, the vast fields, it's ice. Man, it's ice." "Horrible," Jerry shuddered. "Beautiful," said the other. "Marvelous. Think what that means. It means water in the hot lunar day. It means vapor and clouds in the sky. It means that where that is, there is air, life, perhaps. God alone knows all that it means, and we, too, shall know." The ship settled slowly to the surface of the new world. Black blobs of shadow became distinct craters. Volcanoes rose slowly to meet them, to drift aside and rise above as they sank to the floor of the valley. They came to rest upon a rocky floor. On all sides their windows showed a waste of torn and twisted rock. Volcanic mountains towered to the heights, their sides streaked with masses of lava, frozen to stillness these countless years from its molten state. The rising sun, its movement imperceptible, cast long slanting rays between the peaks. It lighted a ghostly world, white with thick hoarfrost of solid carbon dioxide, a silent world locked in the stillness of cold near the absolute zero. Not a breath of air stirred. No flurry of snow gave semblance of life to the scene. Their generators were stilled, and the silence, after the endless roaring of endless days, was overpowering. But Winslow pointed exultantly from one window, where an icy expanse could be seen. "That will be water," he said. "Water, when the sun has risen." He turned on the generator for warmth. The cold was striking through the thick insulated walls. They sat silent, peering out upon that boundless desolation, upon a world's breathless nakedness, exposed for the first time in all eternity to human eyes. Jerry's mind was searching for some means of expression, but the words would not come. There were neither words nor coherent thoughts to give vent to the emotions that surged within him. Their watches showed the passage of nearly 2 Earth days before they dared venture forth. They watched the white mantle of frost vanish into gas. From the darkness that they called west, winds rushed shriekingly into the sunrise. "Convection currents," Winslow explained, "off under the sun. In the direct rays, the heat grows intense, the air rises. This is rushing in to fill the void. It will serve our ends, too. It will churn the air into a mixture we can breathe, dispel the thick layer of CO2 that must have formed close to the ground." More hours and the icy sheet was melting. A film of water rippled in the gusts of wind. Winslow opened the release valve that would permit the escape of air from their chamber, equalizing the pressure within and without. The air hissed through the valve, and he closed it so the escape was gradual. "We must exercise," he told Jerry. "We will decompress slowly, like divers coming up from deep sea work. But watch yourself, he warned. Remember, you are 6 times as strong as you were on Earth. Don't jump through the roof. The valve had ceased to hiss when Winslow opened it wide. The air in their cabin was thin. Their lungs labored heavily at first. Jerry felt, as he had felt more than once at some great elevation on Earth. But they lived, and they could breathe, and they were about to do what never man had done, to set foot on this place men called the unknown side of the moon. Earth habits were strong. Jerry brought a pistol and his hunting knife out of his pack and hung them at his belt as the inventor opened the door and sniffed cautiously of the air. Jerry Foster's blood was racing. The air was cold on his face as he rushed out, but it brought to his nostrils odors strange and yet strangely familiar. He was oddly light-headed, irresponsible as a child, as he shouted and danced and threw himself high in the air to laugh childishly at the pure pleasure of his light landing. The sun made long shadows of 2 ludicrous figures that went leaping and racing across the rocks. Their strength was prodigious, and they were filled with an upwelling joy of living and the combined urge of an eternity of springtimes. The very air tingled with life. There was overpowering intoxication in this potent, exhilarating breath from a world new born. The ground that they crossed so recklessly was a vast honeycomb of caves. Between the rocks the soil was soft with the waters from melting ice, and the men laughed as they floundered at times in the oozing mud. Beyond was a lake, and it was blue with a depth of color that was almost black, a reflection of the deep velvet blackness of the sky overhead. And beyond that was the sloping side of an extinct volcano. Up, up, Jerry shouted. From up there we will see the whole world, the whole moon, he laughed, as he repeated the exultant phrase. The moon, the whole moon. Despite their strength, which carried them in wild bounds across impassable chasms, their laboring lungs checked them in the ascent. The joyous inebriation was wearing off. Winslow met his companion's eyes sheepishly as they stopped where a sheer cliff of basalt above caught and held the warmth of the sun's rays. Behind them it rose a straight 100 feet, and before stretched a vast panorama. The sun was mounting now in the sky. It brought into strong relief the welter of volcanic waste that extended in bold detail through the clear air far out to the horizon, where, misty and dim, the first vaporous clouds were forming from the steaming earth. As they watched, the depressing bareness and emptiness of that gray-black expanse was changing. Far to the east a pink flush was spreading on the hills. It wavered and flowed, and it changed as they watched to deep areas of orange and red. The delicate pink swept in waves over valleys and hills, a vast kaleidoscope of coloration that rioted over a strange world. In silence it spilled into the valley below. The slope they had traversed was radiant with color. At their feet the ground was in motion. It heaved and rolled in countless places. Rounded shapes in myriads were emerging. Plants, mushroom growths, poured up from the earth to drink in the sunshine of their brief summer. They burst the earth to show unfolding leaves or blunted, rounding heads that grew before the men's incredulous eyes. Winslow was the first to recover from the stupefying beauty of the spectacle. The machine, he gasped. Back to the ship. We will be swamped, overwhelmed. He rushed madly back down the slope. Jerry was beside him, a revulsion of feeling driving him to frantic efforts. The piercing beauty that had enthralled him has become a thing of terror. The soft, pulpy growing things that crushed beneath his feet were a menace in their lust for life. They were a mile or more from the machine. Could they ever find it? Jerry wondered. The whole landscape was changed. Bare rocks were half hidden now under clinging, creeping vines. Only the sun remained as a guide. They must go toward the sun and a little north. He followed Winslow, who was circling a huge area of weird growths that already were waist high. They leaped across a gaping chasm and fought their way over a low hill rank with vegetation, only to be confronted by a maze of great stalks that sprouted as they watched, dismayed, and threw out grotesque and awkward branches. They made one futile effort to force their way, but the trunks, though pliant, were unyielding. To attempt to find their way through the labyrinth was folly. "We've got to keep on trying," said Jerry Foster. "We've got to get back, or..." Winslow, as the look in his eyes showed, needed no ending to that sentence. There was the summer of a lunar day ahead. The inventor did not need to be told of the scorching, broiling heat that would wither the land when the sun struck from straight overhead. And in their ship was food and water and a means of transport to the cooler heights above. It was Jerry who took charge of the situation. Here was a prodigious laboratory in which Wilson's science was useless. But in fighting with nature, even nature in as weird and terrifying a mood as this, Jerry felt himself not entirely incompetent. He looked about him. It had been but an hour since they watched the first onslaught of this life that engulfed them. And now they were cut off. Through an opening where bare rocks made a rift in the vegetation, he saw again the high ground where they had stood. There was more rock there on the volcanic slope. The growing things were in clumps, islands, rather than continents of rank growth. "We must go back," he told Winslow, "and climb while we can. Get to the high ground and take bearings on the place where we left the ship. We'll look over the ground and figure some way to get there." Winslow nodded. He was plainly bewildered, lost in the new jungle. He followed Jerry, who bounded across a crevice in the earth. The ground was rotten with the honeycomb of caves and cracks. Jerry forced his way through and over a rock heap where the thick trunks of nightmare trees were spaced farther apart. There was an opening ahead. He started forward, then stopped abruptly and motioned the other to silence. From beyond there came sounds. There was a rending of soft, pliant tissue. The sound came through the thin air from a grove up ahead, where big plants were waving, though the wind had long since ceased. To their ears came a snoring, blubbering snuffle. A stone was dislodged to come bounding toward them from the hillside. The soft plants were flattened before it. The men cowered in the shelter of a giant fungus. Beyond the rocks, above the mottled reds and yellows of the grotesque trees, a head appeared. It waved at the end of a long, leathery neck. All mouth, it seemed to the watchers, as they saw a pair of short forelegs pull the succulent tops of the giant growth into a capacious maw. Below there was visible a part of a gigantic grayish body. It was crashing down toward them, eating greedily as it came. "Back," said Jerry softly. "Go back to that cave. We will hide there in some crack in the ground." They picked their way noiselessly over the rocks. The cave they had crossed offered a refuge from the beast. It went slantingly down into the ground, a great tunnel deep in the rock. They dropped into the opening and started forward, only to recoil at the fetid stench that assailed their nostrils. "A bear pit," gasped Jerry. "Great heavens, what a smell!" They stopped, dismayed. Far below them, in the bowels of some subterranean passage, was the crashing of loose stone. A scrambling and scratching of great claws came echoing to them. They leaped madly for the outer air. "Over here," Jerry directed, and led the way, crouching, to the concealment of great stalks and vine-covered rocks. He pointed toward the open ground where they had been a few moments before. The tree-eater was out in full view. Its flabby, barrel-like body was squatted like that of some unearthly giant toad on massive hind legs. It sat erect. Its forelegs hung in the air as a hoarse, snarling cry came from the cave. The great head, perched on the long, leathery neck, waved from side to side. End of Part 3.